Yo, what up guys? Metaphor here, and I'm going to be doing a bit of a different video today. I'm going to be doing a tier list video. I'm going to be covering the guns in a different way though, not just based off like their time to kill or whatever. I'm going to do it based off of how easy they are to use, how like just basically their general effectiveness. Because a lot of guns people like to make arguments for like, oh, this gun is really good if you know how to control the recoil, but that's actually a massive downside. And if you have to quote unquote control the recoil, that's something that somebody using a different gun doesn't have to deal with, therefore making the gun a lot easier and better to use. I'm also going to rate the guns in a certain way where, like for example, the pistols are mainly going to be in the F tier, because realistically speaking, you're not going to be using a pistol pretty much ever, and there's not very much floor loot for the pistol either. So this tier list might look a little bit different than what you'd think, but I think that this is, yeah, I think this is pretty much where my head's at, and I haven't actually practiced this. I'm just gonna kind of wing it as I go. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this different kind of video. And I think right now the reason why I'm making the video in general is because the meta is really anyone's game. I think there isn't any really overpowered guns. The only gun that's absolutely complete and utter god mode right now is, I would say, the Origin. I think the Origin is the most messed up weapon in the entire game. The main reason why it's really bad, and you know, it's actually been bad for since the release of Warzone actually, but nobody really realized that it was an overpowered weapon until he made it on the floor loot. And the real issue here with it being on the floor is that there is a gray Origin, a green Origin, and a blue Origin. So obviously you can find a lot of gray ones, but you can also find a blue one or a green one. So there's way too many spawns of this on the ground, and it is absolutely overpowered. As you guys can see, there's different like ammo types. I'm not really going to count these. Like, I'm not going to count the Striker 45 over the Striker. Like, that's just stupid. So I'm just going to grab like the AUG. I'll just grab one, and that counts. I think the AUG is decent. I think this gun is pretty overrated in general, but I'm going to put it in the B tier. The reason I'm putting it in B tier is just because I think there's better SMGs. I think at very, very close range, this gun isn't bad. And it's actually one of the better floor loots in the game. Unfortunately, it only comes out with 25 bullets if you find the grade version, but I still think the floor loot is not bad. So B tier for the AUG. Kilo 1 for 1. If I were to rate this personally, I wouldn't put it in S tier, but this gun is extremely easy to use, and if you're on a controller, it has no recoil. The aim assist is really insane with this weapon, so S tier for the Kilo, even though you'll never see me using it really, because I hate the weapon a lot. M4A1 A tier. I would put this in my own personal S tier over the Kilo, but this gun actually has some recoil to it. And it's not the easiest gun to control in the game. I think it's really good, but it has faced several nerfs since its release, and yeah, I really don't have anything else to say. This gun is insanely good. Now, if you can control it, again, I was talking about this earlier, I would bump this up, but I think in general, for the average player, this gun is not top tier. Car 98, this is, obviously, you guys watch my channel, you know I want to put this bad boy in S tier, but I can't do that. It has to go to B tier because this gun is actually one of the hardest guns in the game to use if you're not really skilled. And obviously not everyone in the game is going to be capable of using this weapon. If you are good, it's S tier, but this gun is very not noob friendly. So to B tier it goes. MK2 carbine, nope. Not even going to talk about this gun. This gun is complete dog shit in Warzone. I'll actually do the Striker here. I actually really like the Striker. I've made a couple videos on it, and I understand, like, you guys see the videos and you see, like, the clickbait, like, oh, this is the new OP weapon, but I actually think the Striker is pretty decent with the sniper rifle. The most recent video that I uploaded, so the one before this one, because this is going up on the 29th, it should. The video on the 28th, this is me using the Striker in, like, the most effective way. Actually, no, I think on the video on the 28th, I used a Striker and a shotgun. But I think the Striker is like kind of like an MP7 where you want to pair it with a sniper rifle. But I have to give the gun a C tier. There's really no flexibility with the attachments, and it's just in general outshined by other SMGs. It's pretty bad at close range, pretty bad at long range, but there's like a sweet spot between the close to mid range where it's actually really good, and that's the kind of distance you want to be covering with a gun that isn't a sniper rifle. So if you're someone who likes the gun, go for it. I still use this gun a decent amount, but I don't think it's very good. Crossbow, F tier, dog show weapon. SKS, F tier. I know this gun can be like okay if you're hitting your shots, but if you're hitting your shots, then just use the car, right? So I don't agree with this weapon at all. AX50, I'm also going to put in the B tier. So it is definitely easier than the Kar 98, but this gun has really weird bullet drop, and I think if you're a complete noob, you're probably just better off using the HDR anyway. So I would honestly maybe even move the car down to C tier, but because if you aren't hitting headshots with the car, it's absolutely useless. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I'm actually going to put down the C tier. And again, I would put this to S tier if you're good at the game, but it's actually C tier because you have to hit headshots for it to be good. Dragunov, it's not usable. It's very bad. I've used this a few times just to kind of troll. If you body shot somebody and then headshot them, it's a kill. But again, why do that when you can just use the car and hit him in the head, right? So don't ever use the Dragunov. HDR, S tier. Again, I really wouldn't. I don't even use this weapon, but the amount of times I die to bots that are using this thing, it is complete hit scan pretty much across the entire planet. If you're trying to get into sniping, I really recommend using the HDR over the car or the AX50. And yeah, I mean, this gun basically speaks for itself. This is why you see all the bots using it. It's extremely overpowered and doesn't take any skill to use. Pistols, we're just going to move them on to F tier. I think if you akimbo the X16, X16, I think they were not easier dog shit. Where's the other gun? M19. I think these guns are decent if you akimbo them. And the reason why you do akimbo on these, and I've been doing it a lot lately actually, is because it allows you to take restock on your first class or ghost because you're not relying on overkill. So let's say you go to Superstore, you land there, grab your loadout. You could grab like a kilo with akimbo X16s or M19s, and then boom, you already have your ghost. You're not investing into overkill early, and you have a massive like power spike early where you have ghost and everyone else is rocking overkill. And these things are actually pretty competitive in close range. So I would put them higher, but it just doesn't feel right. But these are definitely really good weapons, and they're extremely easy to use. So, and I think they're really fun to use too. So they'll go to C tier. The FAL, I don't actually know why people stopped using this. I guess it's kind of hard to use. I'd probably put this a bit higher, but you can't really use it as an SMG as well anymore, unless you're like an absolute crack addict and you're just spamming. I think B is an okay spot for it. I think this gun could be higher, but literally no one uses it, so it's hard to say, but I think B is fine. The Grau, I would put this as my own personal S tier. The Grau is one of my favorite guns. However, it does too low of damage, and you need too good of accuracy in order to make use of this weapon, so it unfortunately falls to A because I think this gun's an absolute laser beam, and I don't think the gun is that hard to use, but it just doesn't do enough damage to be an S tier in my opinion. For my own personal list, this would be an S tier though, but for what you guys should be looking at, this is definitely not an S tier weapon. Odin, I would say it's probably C tier. It's just a worse FAL. The hit detection on this gun seems to be really wonky too. I don't know if you guys have really noticed it, but I do not like this weapon at all. The FAMAS, I've been having some encounters with the FAMAS lately, and I think it's actually not the worst weapon in the game. I guess I'll put it at C. I think there's some potential for this weapon if you're really good at it. It definitely doesn't take that much skill to use, but it does have a weird shooting pattern. But at close range, this gun is actually an absolute monster, so I think this gun could actually be decent. I'm still trying to experiment with it, but for now I'm going to put it in C. But I think the FAMAS is like not that bad of a weapon, actually. M13, I'm going to put it in B tier. This is actually one of my favorite guns in the entire game. I'd probably put it in my own personal A tier, but this is kind of like a Grau, but it just does less damage to the body. If you shoot him in the head, it does really good damage, and the fire rate is super satisfying and really fast, and I love this gun so much. But there's a reason why you don't see people use it. It just shoots marshmallows, so unfortunately I'm going to put it in B tier. But I think this gun could go higher if you're a better player. AK-47, this is going to make a lot of people sad, but this is going to be the first gun in D tier. Unfortunately, it just has too much recoil. The iron sights are awful. It has very bad long-range capabilities, and there's kind of just no real reason to use it unless you're just one of those people that love the AK. You have to devote an attachment to a sight. A lot of guns in this game are pretty, you know, like a lot of these guns get the poor benefit of having, well, not the poor benefit, but the poor penalty of having to run a sight on them, and the AK, that's just the icing on the cake. I think if the AK had a better iron sight, you could maybe use it a bit more, but you need so many attachments for this gun to be good. I just don't think it's possible. The Scar as well, back-to-back, another D tier weapon. The Scar does decent damage, and the iron sights are great, but you have to invest an attachment just to get the gun to 30 rounds, which is the default for every other weapon in the game, pretty much. So I think if the Scar had a bigger magazine size, you would probably see it a bit more, but even though it has like one of the best iron sights in the game and really high damage, the magazine size is just way too small, and this gun will never be meta. So, unfortunately, because this gun's actually kind of fun to use. The RAM, I think the RAM could go A. It's kind of like an SMG AR. This kind of gun you want to use with a sniper rifle. It's kind of weird to make it your primary because its long range is not the best. But I do think the RAM is actually one of the better ARs in the game right now. And I think if you put this with an HDR or an AX50 or a car, you have a pretty good loadout there. You can also put it with an Origin. You can't really go wrong with that, but you just got to pick your fights wisely. I think the RAM is a pretty underrated weapon, and more people are going to start using it soon. MP5 is going to go into S tier. You guys have seen the MP5. You guys know why it's OP. I don't really need to talk about it. MP5 is extremely good. MP7 release, or I wish the MP7 was still S tier, but it's just not. The MP7 got silent nerfed a while ago, which means like Infinity Ward actually does a lot of nerfs that they don't talk about in the public, and the MP7 was hit by a big one after I think the first Warzone season. This gun is one of my favorite guns in the entire game, but unfortunately it just doesn't do enough damage anymore, and it's just not really worth it. So I would put this higher if I could, but even B tier might be a bit too generous. I'd probably give this like a C+, but we're gonna leave it in B just because I love it. P90, I think the P90 is on the brink of breaking into B, but it's still in the C tier. There's kind of no reason to use the P90 over the MP7 or like even like a RAM. Like the RAM and the P90 are kind of the same weapon, except the RAM is just better in my opinion. So I really wouldn't put the P90 anywhere other than C tier. The Bison, I think, has to go into D tier. There's just no reason to use this weapon. The best part about it is that you don't have to use a magazine because it starts with 64, but it's just not, it just doesn't do that well up close. Its mid-range is really bad, and obviously its long range is super bad, so the only good thing about this weapon is the magazine size. Everything else is pretty trash. Mini Uzi, I think the Mini Uzi is actually kind of decent, but there's just no reason to run it over the other weapons. So unfortunately this is a competition, and this gun just loses to a lot of different things. I think this gun is like decent as like a, if you're gonna run this weapon, it's gotta be with a sniper rifle. This gun kind of fits the same level that the RAM and the MP7 fit and the Striker, but it's just worse than all of them. So the model, I think the shotguns are pretty bad. I'm gonna put most of them in here. I've seen a post recently about the R9O being like the best shotgun in Warzone, but I just completely disagree with that. The Origin is way better at killing squads, and with the R9O, you have to be extremely accurate with it. And if you don't kill them in your first double pump, you're just gonna die like more times than not. So maybe I'll put it in D tier just because I know people, you know, are thinking the fire rounds are good on it. But that's all I can really give it. Like the Origin is just so consistent and so much better in my opinion. I would not put this higher. I don't think this is viable, even if you're seeing it on YouTube videos that it is. I think it's a complete lie. VLK Rogue, ass. 725, really fucking bad. M91, not good either, unfortunately. MG34 is pretty bad. PKM I think is pretty decent. I think I maybe put this in A tier. It's kind of like the Bruin, but I think it and the Bruin are like pretty even right now. I know a lot of people are saying the PKM is like the new Bruin, but there's something off about this gun. I don't know if it's like the bullet velocity or something, but there's something wrong with this gun. The bullets just do not hit when they're supposed to. That's all I can really say about that. The Holger is a waste of time. The EBR is terrible. Launcher is a launcher. I mean, I don't really need to put it in a tier. Yeah, all these guns can pretty much just go into the bottom. And then there's the new guns. There's the Fennec. I can't actually use the Fennec here because it's not on the thing. But I'd probably put the Fennec in C tier. I would probably put the ISO in C tier as well. They're basically the same weapon. Maybe the Fennec in D tier, but the ISO in C. They're both dog shit. I wouldn't really use either of them, honestly. For AR, there's the AN94, which I would probably put in C tier. The Galil is a really great weapon. I'd probably put in A tier right now. It's the AR that came out last season. Again, I can't do a picture for it, so I'm sorry. But the Galil is definitely a gun that you guys should be using. It's also pretty easy to use. I'm trying to think if there's another gun that I'm missing. I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the tier list. Hopefully, I mean, if you guys disagree, I'd like to hear about it in the comments. But yeah, obviously some guns would be moved around, but you have to think about how easy they are to use. And that is the big takeaway here, because, you know, some guns would be higher, some guns would be lower. But that's what my personal opinions are for the guns right now for the average player to use, which I'm assuming you guys are. So, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. I just want to say thank you guys so much for all the support on the videos lately. There's been a ton of likes on each and every video, and it means so much to me and the editor. The YouTube is finally popping off. I feel like we've been making really good content on the YouTube channel for a very long time now. And now is finally the time where, you know, it's starting to get noticed. So thank you guys a lot. I hope you guys can keep liking the videos, and I will see you on the next one. Peace out.